Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, Southeast England, just near the English Channel. When the sages met at Naimisharanya to perform the greatest sacrifice, actually. There's different soma sacrifices. They're called satra. And they can last for a day or for weeks or months. But the biggest one and the most rarely attempted lasts for 1,000 years. And the sages in Naimisharanya knew what was going to happen in the Kali Yuga, and so they decided to try to help the souls that had not yet been born yet in the Kali Yuga. And after Balaram came, when he was on pilgrimage, and killed Ramaharshi and Shuta, who was the person who was delivering the lectures, in between the different sacrificial performances, they would hear the scriptures. And Balaram took the advice of the sages and transferred the long life that had been blessed, that Ramaharshi and Sutta had been blessed with, transferred it to Sutta, Ugrashava Sutta, the son of Ramaharshi. Now at this time they had already heard a lot, and in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the sages expressed to Sutta Goswami that they're ready to hear the essence, they're ready to hear the highest thing, the best thing. And that's when the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was spoken for the second time. And therefore, no one can be satisfied until they hear the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the Bhagavatam teachings. His followers have all elaborated on the Bhagavatam's teachings. Srila Prabhupada made the translation of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam his magnum opus, but also he made sure that we got the essence of the essence, the 10th canto of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, by this wonderful masterpiece, summary study of the 10th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God, of the essence of the essence of the essence. So we're so fortunate to be able to hear this book together. Before we do, read today's installment, we'll chant as usual, recite the Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Mahima Stotram, the glorification of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, especially the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna, by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Śrīmad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidvandoditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Premavarshakshadayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madgudo Mad Mahadana Mannishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin adini chuchatakada hanamun jagadachin mam premna rit kantayoks buddha. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Bhagavatam is continuing to reveal the pastimes of Sri Krishna, the eternal Leela, Nitya Leela pastimes of Krishna that are constantly being performed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even in this material world, in universe after universe after universe. We've come to chapter 23, delivering the wives of the Brāhmaṇas who performed sacrifices. The morning passed, and the cowherd boys were very hungry because they had not eaten breakfast. They immediately approached Krishna and Balaram and said, "Dear Krishna and Balaram, you are both all-powerful. You can kill many, many demons, but today we are much afflicted with hunger, and this is disturbing us. Please arrange for something that will mitigate our hunger." Requested in this way by their friends, Lord Krishna and Balarama arranged to show compassion to certain wives of Brāhmaṇas who were performing sacrifices. These wives were great devotees of the Lord, and Krishna took this opportunity to bless them. He said, "My dear friends, please go to the house of the Brāhmaṇas nearby. They are now engaged in performing the Vedic sacrifice known as Angirasa, for they desire elevation to the heavenly planets. All of you please go to them." Then Lord Krishna warned his friends, "These Brāhmanas are not Vaishnavas. They cannot even chant our names, Krishna and Balarama. They are very busy in chanting the Vedic hymns, although the purpose of Vedic knowledge is to find me. But because they are not attracted by the names of Krishna and Balarama, you had better not ask them for anything in my name. Better ask for some charity in the name of Balarama." Charity is generally given to high-class Brāhmanas, but Krishna and Balarama did not appear in a Brāhmana family. Balarama was known as the son of Vyāsadeva, a Kshatriya, and Krishna was known in Vrindavan as the son of Nanda Maharaj, who was a Vaishya. Neither belonged to the Brāhmana community. Therefore, Krishna considered that the Brāhmanas engaged in performing sacrifices might not be induced to give charity to a Kshatriya and Vaishya. But at least, if you utter the name of Balarama, they may prefer to give in charity to a Kshatriya rather than to me, because I am only a Vaishya, Krishna. Being thus ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the boys went to the Brāhmaṇas and began to ask for some charity. They approached them with folded hands and fell down on the ground to offer respect. O earthly gods, kindly hear us, who were ordered by Lord Krishna and Balarama. We hope you know them both very well, and we wish you all good fortune. Krishna and Balarama are tending cows nearby, and we have accompanied them. We have come to ask for some food from you. You are all Brāhmanas and knowers of religious principles, and if you think that you should give us charity, then give us some food, and we shall all eat along with Krishna and Balarama. You are the most respectable Brāhmanas within the human society, and you are expected to know all the principles of religious procedure. Although the boys were village boys and were not expected to be learned in all the Vedic principles of religious ritual, they hinted that because of their association with Krishna and Balarama, they knew all those principles. By addressing the Brāhmanas as knowers of all religious principles, the boys expressed the point of view that when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balarama, were asking for food, the Brāhmanas should immediately deliver some without hesitation, because, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one should perform yajna, sacrifices, only for the satisfaction of Vishnu. The boys continued. Lord Vishnu, as Krishna and Balarama, is standing waiting, and you should immediately deliver whatever food you have in your stock. They also explained to the Brāhmanas when food is to be accepted and when it is not to be accepted. Generally, the Vaishnavas, or pure devotees of the Lord, do not take part in ordinary sacrificial performances, but they know very well the ceremonials called Diksha, Pashusangstha, and Sotramani. One is permitted to take food after the procedure of Diksha and before the animal sacrificial ceremony and the Sotramani, or ceremony in which liquors are also offered. The boys said, "We can take your food at the present stage of your ceremony, for now it will not be prohibited, so you can deliver us the food." Although the companions of Lord Krishna and Balarama were simple cowherd boys, they were in a position to dictate even to the high-class Brāhmanas engaged in the Vedic rituals of sacrifice. But the smarta Brāhmanas, who were simply sacrificial-minded, could not understand the dictation of the transcendental devotees of the Lord. They could not even appreciate the begging of the Supreme Lord, Krishna and Balarama. Although they heard all the arguments on behalf of Krishna and Balarama, they did not care for them, and they refused to speak to the boys. Despite being highly elevated in the knowledge of Vedic sacrificial rites, all such non-devotee Brāhmanas, although they think of themselves as very highly elevated, are ignorant, foolish persons. All their activities are childish because they do not know the purpose of the Vedas, as it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, to understand Krishna. In spite of their advancement in Vedic knowledge and rituals, they do not understand Krishna. Therefore, their knowledge of the Vedas is useless. Lord Chaitanya therefore gave his valuable opinion that although a person may not be born in a Brahmana family, if he knows Krishna or the science of Krishna consciousness, he is more than a Brahmana, and he is quite fit to become a spiritual master. There are various details to be observed in the performance of sacrifices. They are known as desha, place, kala, time, pritag dravya, the different detailed paraphernalia, mantra, hymns, tantra, scriptural evidences, agni, fire, ritvik, learned performers of sacrifices, devata, the demigods, yajamana, the performer of the sacrifices, kratu, the sacrifice itself, and dharma, the procedures. All these are for satisfying Krishna. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that he is the actual enjoyer of all sacrifices, because he is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Supreme Absolute Truth, beyond the conception or speculation of the material senses. He is present just like an ordinary human boy. But for persons who identify themselves with the body, it is very difficult to understand him. The Brāhmaṇas were very much interested in the comforts of the material body and in elevation to the higher planetary residences called Swargavas. They were therefore completely unable to understand the position of Krishna. When the boys saw that the Brāhmaṇas would not reply to them, even with a simple yes or no, they became very much disappointed. They then returned to Lord Krishna and Balarama and explained everything that had happened. After hearing their statements, the Supreme Personality of Godhead smiled. He told them that they should not be sorry for being refused by the Brāhmaṇas, because that is the way of begging. He convinced them that one who is engaged in collecting or begging should not think that he will be successful everywhere. He may be unsuccessful in some places, but that should not be cause for disappointment. Lord Krishna then asked all the boys to go again, but this time to the wives of those Brāhmanas engaged in sacrifices. He also informed them that these wives were great devotees. They are always absorbed in thinking of us. Go there and ask for some food in my name and the name of Balarama, and I am sure that they will deliver you as much food as you desire. Carrying out Krishna's order, the boys immediately went to the wives of the Brāhmanas. They found the wives sitting inside the Brāhmana's house. They were very beautifully decorated with ornaments. After offering them all respectful obeisances, the boys said, "Dear mothers, please accept our humble obeisances and hear our statement. May we inform you that Lord Krishna and Balarama are nearby. They have come here with the cows, and you may know also that we have come here under their instructions. All of us are very hungry. Therefore we have come to you for some food. Please give us something to eat for Krishna, Balarama, and ourselves." Immediately upon hearing this, the wives of the Brāhmanas became anxious for Krishna and Balaram. These reactions were spontaneous. They did not have to be convinced of the importance of Krishna and Balarama. Immediately upon hearing their names, they became very eager to see them. Being advanced by thinking of Krishna constantly, they were performing the greatest form of mystic meditation. All the wives then became very busily engaged in filling up different pots with nice food. Due to the performance of the sacrifice, the various foods were all very palatable. After collecting a feast, they prepared to go to Krishna, their most beloved object, exactly in the way rivers flow to the sea. For a long time, the wives had been eager to see Krishna. However, when they were preparing to leave home to go see him, their husbands, fathers, sons, and relatives asked them not to go. but the wives did not comply. When a devotee is called by the attraction of Krishna, he does not care for bodily ties. The women entered the forest of Vrindavan on the bank of the Yamuna, which was verdant with vegetation and newly grown vines and flowers. Within that forest, they saw Krishna and Balaram engaged in tending the cows, along with their very affectionate boyfriends. The Brāhmanas' wives saw Krishna with a blackish complexion, wearing a garment that glittered like gold. He wore a nice garland of forest flowers and a peacock feather on his head. He was also painted with the minerals found in Vrindavan, and he looked exactly like a dancing actor on a theatrical stage. They saw him resting one hand on the shoulder of his friend, and in his other hand he was holding a lotus flower. His ears were decorated with lilies. He wore marks of tilak, and he was smiling charmingly. With their very eyes, the wives of the Brāhmanas saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of whom they had heard so much, who was so dear to them, and in whom their minds were always absorbed. Now they saw him eye to eye and face to face, and Krishna entered within their hearts through their eyes. Within themselves, they began to embrace Krishna to their heart's content, and the distress of separation was mitigated immediately. They were just like great sages who, by their advancement of knowledge, merge into the existence of the Supreme. As the super soul living in everyone's heart, Lord Krishna could understand their minds. They had come to him despite all the protests of their relatives, fathers, husbands, and brothers, and despite all the duties of household affairs. They came just to see him, who was their life and soul. They were exactly following Krishna's instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. One should surrender to him, giving up all varieties of occupational and religious duties. He therefore began to speak to them, smiling very magnificently. It should be noted in this connection that when Krishna entered into the wives' hearts, and when they embraced him and felt the transcendental bliss of being merged with him, the Supreme Lord Krishna did not lose his identity, nor did the individual wives lose theirs. The individuality of both the Lord and the wives remained, yet they felt oneness in existence. When a lover submits to his lover without any pinch of personal consideration, that is called oneness. Lord Chaitanya has taught us this feeling of oneness in his Shikshastaka. Krishna may act freely, doing whatever he likes, but the devotee should always be in oneness or in agreement with his desires. That oneness was exhibited by the wives of the Brāhmanas in their love for Krishna. Krishna welcomed them with the following words. My dear wives of the Brāhmanas, you are all very fortunate and are welcome here. Please let me know what I can do for you. Your coming here to see me, neglecting all the restrictions and hindrances of relatives, fathers, brothers, and husbands, is completely befitting. One who does this actually knows his self-interest, because rendering transcendental loving service unto me without motive or restriction is actually auspicious for the living entities. Lord Krishna here confirms that the conditioned soul can reach the highest perfectional stage by surrendering unto him. One must give up all other responsibilities. This complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the most auspicious path for the conditioned soul, because the Supreme Lord is the supreme object of love. Everyone is loving his self according to the advancement of his knowledge. Ultimately, when a person comes to understand that his self is the spirit soul, and that the spirit soul is nothing but a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, he recognizes the Supreme Lord as the ultimate goal of love, and then surrenders unto him. This surrender is considered auspicious for the conditioned soul. Our life, property, home, wife, children, house, country, society, and all paraphernalia, which are very dear to us, are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the central object of love because he gives us all bliss, expanding himself in so many ways according to our different situations, namely bodily, mental, or spiritual. My dear wives of the Brāhmaṇas, Krishna said, you can now return to your homes. Engage yourselves in sacrificial activities and in the service of your husbands and household affairs, so that your husbands will be pleased with you, and the sacrifice which they have begun will be properly executed. After all, your husbands are householders, and without your help, how can they execute their prescribed duties? The wives of the Brāhmaṇas replied, Dear Lord, this sort of instruction does not befit you. Your eternal promise is that you will always protect your devotees. And now you must fulfill this promise. Anyone who comes and surrenders unto you never goes back to the conditioned life of material existence. We expect that you will now fulfill your promise. We have surrendered unto your lotus feet, which are covered by tulsi leaves, so we have no desire to give up the shelter of your lotus feet and return to the company of our so-called relatives, friends, and society. And what shall we do if we return home? Our husbands, brothers, fathers, sons, mothers, and friends will no longer accept us at home because we have already left them all. Therefore, we have no shelter to return to. Please, therefore, do not ask us to return home, but arrange for our stay under your lotus feet, so that we can eternally live under your protection. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, My dear wives of the Brāhmaṇas, rest assured that your husbands will not neglect you on your return, nor will your brothers, sons, or fathers refuse to accept you, because you are my pure devotees. Not only your relatives, but also people in general, as well as the demigods, will be satisfied with you. Krishna is situated as the Supersoul in everyone's heart, so someone who becomes a pure devotee of Lord Krishna immediately becomes pleasing to everyone. The pure devotee of Lord Krishna is never inimical to anyone, nor can any sane man be an enemy of a pure devotee. Transcendental love for me does not depend upon bodily connections, Krishna said further, but anyone whose mind is always absorbed in me will surely, very soon, come to me for my eternal association. After being instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the wives returned home to their respective husbands. Pleased to see their wives back home, the Brāhmaṇas sat together with them and executed the performances of sacrifices as enjoined in the Shastras. According to Vedic principle, religious rituals must be executed by the husband and wife together. When the Brāhmanas' wives returned, the sacrifice was duly and nicely executed. One of the Brahmana's wives, however, who had been forcibly checked from going to see Krishna, began to remember him as she heard of his bodily features. Being completely absorbed in his thought, she gave up her material body, conditioned by the laws of nature. After the departure of the Brahmana's wives, Sri Govinda and his cowherd boyfriends enjoyed the food they had offered. In this way, the ever-joyful personality of Godhead exhibited his transcendental pastimes in the guise of an ordinary human being in order to attract the common people to Krishna consciousness. With his words and beauty, he attracted all the cows, cowherd boys, and damsels in Vrindavan. All of them together enjoyed the pastimes of the Lord. After the return of their wives from Krishna, the Brahmanas engaged in the performance of sacrifices began to regret their sinful activities in refusing food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They could finally understand their mistake. Engaged in the performance of Vedic rituals, they had neglected the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had appeared just like an ordinary human being, and asked for some food. They began to condemn themselves after seeing the faith and devotion of their wives. They regretted very much that although their wives were elevated to the platform of pure devotional service, they themselves could not understand that even a little bit. They could not understand even a little bit of how to love and offer transcendental, loving service to the Supreme Lord. I just, somehow or other, my computer just took me out of where we were. Give me a minute, or a few seconds, at least. After the return of their wives from Krishna, the Brahmanas engaged in the performance of sacrifices began to regret their sinful activities in refusing food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They could finally understand their mistake. Engaged in the performance of Vedic rituals, they had neglected the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had appeared just like an ordinary human being, and asked for some food. They began to condemn themselves after seeing the faith and devotion of their wives. They regretted very much that although their wives were elevated to the platform of pure devotional service, they themselves could not understand even a little bit of how to love and offer transcendental loving service to the Supreme Soul. They began to talk among themselves. To hell with our being born Brahmanas. To hell with our learning all the Vedic literatures. To hell with our performing great sacrifices and observing all the rules and regulations. To hell with our family. To hell with our expert service in performing the rituals exactly according to the description of the scriptures. To hell with it all, for we have not developed transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the speculation of the mind, body, and senses. The learned Brahmanas, expert in Vedic ritualistic performances, were properly regretful, because if one does not develop Krishna consciousness, all discharge of religious duties is simply a waste of time. They continue to talk among themselves. The external energy of Krishna is so strong that it can create illusion to overcome even the greatest mystic yogi. Although we expert Brāhmaṇas are considered to be the teachers of all other sections of human society, we have also been illusioned by the external energy. Just see how fortunate these women are. They have so devotedly dedicated their lives to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, that they could easily do what is ordinarily so difficult. They gave up their family connections, which are just like a dark well for the continuation of material miseries. Women are in general, being very simple at heart, can very easily take to Krishna consciousness. And when they develop love of Krishna, they can easily get liberation from the clutches of Maya, which are very difficult for even so-called intelligent and learned men to surpass. The Brāhmaṇas continued. According to Vedic injunction, women are not allowed to undergo the purificatory process of initiation by the sacred thread, nor are they allowed to live as brahmacharinis in the ashram of the spiritual master, nor they are advised to undergo the strict disciplinary procedures, nor are they very expert in discussing the philosophy of self-realization. By nature they are not very pure, nor are they very much attached to auspicious activities. Therefore, how wonderful it is that these women have developed transcendental love for Krishna, the Lord of all mystic yogis. They have surpassed all of us in firm faith and devotion unto Krishna. Although we are considered to be masters in all purificatory processes, we did not actually know what their goal is because we are too much attached to the materialistic way of life. Even though we were reminded of Krishna and Balarama by the cowherd boys, we disregarded them. We now think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply played a trick of mercy on us by sending his friends to beg food from us. Otherwise, he had no need to send them. He could have satisfied their hunger then and there, just by willing to do so. If someone denies Krishna's self-sufficiency on hearing that he was tending the cows for his livelihood, or if someone doubts his not being in need of the food, thinking that he was actually hungry, then such person should understand that the goddess of fortune is always engaged in his service. In this way, the goddess can break her faulty habit of restlessness. In the Vedic literatures, like the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Krishna is served in his abode with great respect by not only one goddess of fortune, but many thousands. Therefore, it is simply illusion for one to think that Krishna begged food from the Brāhmaṇas. It was actually a trick to show them mercy by teaching them that they should accept him in pure devotional service instead of engaging in ritualistic ceremonies. The Vedic ceremonial paraphernalia, the suitable place, the suitable time, the different grades of articles for performing the ritualistic ceremonies, the Vedic hymns, the process of sacrifice, the priest who was able to perform the sacrifice, the fire, the demigods, the performer of the sacrifice, and the religious principles, all are meant for understanding Krishna. For Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, and the Lord of all mystic yogis. Because he has appeared as a child in the dynasty of the Yadus, we were so foolish that we could not understand that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Brāhmaṇas said. But on the other hand, we are very proud because we have such exalted wives who have developed pure transcendental service of the Lord without being shackled by our rigid opposition. Let us therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, under whose illusory energy, called Maya, we are absorbed in fruitive activities. We therefore pray to the Lord to be kind enough to excuse us, because we are simply captivated by His external energy. We transgressed His order without knowing His transcendental glories. The Brāhmaṇas repented their sinful activities. They wanted to go personally to offer their obeisances unto Him, but being afraid of Kṛṣṇa, they could not go to Krishna and surrender unto Him. In other words, it is very difficult for one to surrender fully under the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being purified by devotional service. The example of the learned Brāhmanas and their wives is vivid. The wives of the Brāhmanas, because they were inspired by pure devotional service, did not care for any kind of opposition. They immediately went to Krishna. But the Brāhmanas, although they had come to know the supremacy of the Lord and were repenting, were still afraid of King Kṛṣṇa, because they were too much addicted to fruitive activities. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 23rd chapter of Krishna, delivering the wives of the Brāhmanas who perform sacrifices. Jai. Shri Krishna, Shri Balarama ki Jai. The wives of the sacrificial Brāhmanas ki Jai. The repentance of the sacrificial Brāhmanas ki Jai. And let us lament for them that they couldn't go to Krishna because they were still afraid of Kṛṣṇa. Hare Krishna. Okay, well that was a lovely chapter, huh? Lovely chapter. All right. It's just after 8 o'clock. We'll stop our reading today for now. And if there are any reflections, any points that stood out in your minds, please.
So, first comment from Gopakanya Devidasi Mataji.
Gopakanya Devidasi.
Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna, all glories to your daily reading, service of Krishna Katha, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
All glories to Prabhupada. I'm so happy to be able to just read these books. Just read the books, word for word. We have our little comments and our discussions, and sometimes I answer questions, but actually, the fact is that there's nothing like hearing out loud Śrīla Prabhupada's books straight. I'll take my Prabhupada straight, thank you. Hare Krishna.
From Krishna Primavati Devidasi. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. From Braj Vallabha Prabhu.
Hey Braj, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupada.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada.
I noticed that Krishna is not born of a Brahman family. Was Lord Chaitanya? What it does mean, the Brāhmaṇas were absorbed in sacrifices and missed Krishna. What does it mean? I think it's a question. What does it mean?
Well, Lord Chaitanya was born in a Brahmana family. And because he was, again, this is the same answer again and again, because he is Krishna, but he's acting as a devotee of Krishna. Mm-hmm. So in this way, he gets to, he decides to appear as Brahmana so that he would be very respected. And when some people still didn't respect him, he took sannyas, the Brahmana sannyasi. So then he got the respect practically of everyone, because in India, everyone will bow down to a sannyasi and give proper respect, even if they're not fully conscious properly of it. Just by the tradition and by the etiquettes, they'll do it. Now, as far as What was the last question? The last part of his question?
What does it mean that the Brahmanas were absorbed in sacrifices and missed Krishna?
Because there's a verse that in the Gita that says that when one becomes free from the attachment to the flowery words of the Vedas, you remember in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a chapter like that, a verse like that, then one can understand what to do. So in India, the Smarta Brahmanas are very much attached to the rules and regulations. For the Smarta Brahmanas, the rules are the master. They can't go beyond the rules. Rupa Goswami calls this niyamagraha. If one worships or does rituals just for the sake of doing them, without understanding what the purpose is, then it's a cause of fall down. But at the same time, if they neglect the rules and regulations, that's also a cause of fall down. So in this case, the Brahmanas were Smarta Brahmanas. They were very attached to the rules and regulations, and they were attached to going to heaven. So persons who are like that, as Krishna describes in the Gita, kamastaista ritta-jnana prapadyante nadevata, who worship demigods and want to go to the heavenly planets, they are ritta-jnana. They are less intelligent. And with that less intelligence, they cannot remember Krishna. It doesn't dawn on them that Krishna is the source of the Vedas, even though the Vedas say so. And that's why it's even more wonderful how Krishna enlightened them by showing them how advanced their lives were in Krishna consciousness, in devotional service. Hare Krishna. It's a pastime of Krishna.
This from Vrajaruka Mataji. Jai, please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. I read this chapter a few days ago, but hearing from you was a totally different experience. Very, very sweet.
Hare Krishna. May your words come true. May the audiobooks that I make of Prabhupada's books, published by the BBT as official audiobooks of Prabhupada's books, may they become influential in helping people become attached to hearing Srila Prabhupada's books. Hare Krishna. So be it.
This is from Charlie Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Bol Bhakta Charlie.
Please accept my humble obeisances. In the reading it was said, we love ourselves according to our acquired knowledge. Could you explain a little about what this means, your servant?
Well, when you're a little child, you don't know very much. So when you're a baby, anything that you touch and you get, what do? You put it in your mouth immediately. Right? So this is, we like our body, ourselves, at that point, it's called anamoya. Everything goes into the mouth for food, because that's consciousness. So like that, there's different degrees of consciousness, there's different degrees of understanding, there are different levels of knowledge. And in those levels of knowledge, one thinks of oneself, just as the body, or as the body of the mind, or then as friends, and then as society and country, and they have self-identification with those different relationships according to their consciousness. But the basis of it is the self. Because without the self in the body, then body's dead, it's inert, it's useless. So repeat again the question to see if I answered it.
We love ourselves according to our acquired knowledge.
Yes. So if we're knowledgeable about the world, then we love ourselves as a person who is, known to the world. etc., etc. Hare Krishna.
From Bhaktarupa, Prabhu.
Yes, Bhaktarupa, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks for another reading. When we heard about the description of Krishna when the Brahmanas' wives first saw him, it was very exciting.
Yes, very beautiful.
Felt like they were seeing the most wonderful celebrity for the first time after hearing so much about him. Really love these vivid descriptions of the Lord.
Yes, this is what's so wonderful about Prabhupada's books. They're so clear and simple and easy to visualize what's happening.
From Krishna Premavati Devidasi, the Brahmanas came to their senses because their wives were fully Krishna conscious. ...
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Rati Manjari Mataji said, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Jai Rati, Hare Krishna.
Ananda Murti Devidasi.
Hari Bol Nanamurti.
Hare Krishna, dear Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Exactly today, Krishna encouraged me for my book distribution. These days I was depressed when I was denied by many people.
Yes.
But yesterday, by your mercy, I've distributed 28 books of Bhagavad Gita, and 4 Krishna books, and 4 other books. But still my mind is doubting myself. Book distribution for me is kind of a begging others to take books. And I
so change your mentality. We are not begging. We are giving the greatest thing.
And I ask friends to distribute these books also and give several books by free because these are sponsored books or books which are sponsored. Anyway, I have doubt whether this way to distribute books are right or wrong. Anyway, I believe this process of book distribution is the highest purification because it is not so easy. I beg your mercy so I can properly serve Śrīla Prabhupāda and his devotees.
Yes, to go out and meet people and distribute the books. Of course, if you're doing sponsored books and you don't have to ask for a donation for them, that's another thing. But the highest way to do it is to discuss the books, convince them that they should read the books, and give a donation because it completes the sacrifice. Just like the Brāhmaṇas' sacrifice was complete when the wives came back Krishna conscious, and everything could go on nicely. So there must be some, and sacrifice was completed actually because the Brahmana's wives gave to Krishna. You see? Purpose of the sacrifice is to please Krishna. They weren't even interested in Krishna. They weren't going to have a proper sacrifice. But the devotees being pure the wives being pure devotees, they gave to Krishna. That completed the sacrifice. That's right. When you're initiated by your spiritual master, you give dakshina, and that completes the sacrifice. So if you think like that and tell the person like that, this is the sacrifice. We're doing a very elevated, activity, sacrifice. And if there's an exchange, then that completes the sacrifice. And you'll be able to understand the books, and your lives will become auspicious. Then that's the highest way to distribute books. But any way you distribute books is good.
Krishna Premavati Devidasi said, thank you for yet another ecstatic reading session. Much loved and appreciated.
Hare Krishna.
Charlie said, thank you, Maharaj. Bhaktarupa. Krishna Premavati Devidasi said, thank you, Maharaj. Ananda Moti Devidasi. I understand Gurudev asked donation for complement of this Sankirtan Yagna.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is a really wonderful chapter because there's so many practical, instructions for our devotional service. How to think, when we're doing our devotional service, how to please Krishna more and more. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead ki jai. Sama Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So come back tomorrow night, and please share the nectar that we're enjoying together with others. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Hari Bol.